The mystery of RH negative blood in ancient history. There is a bloodline, a secret bloodline, that has moved through history like a whisper, never announced, never explained, but always there. 15% of humanity carries it. Most have no idea. And in ancient history, this bloodline appears again and again in places it shouldn't be, among pharaohs, among priests, among rulers who claimed descent from the gods themselves. The mystery of RH negative blood in ancient history is not just about genetics. It is about power, about knowledge, about secrets that were buried with civilizations that vanished long ago. And tonight, as you settle into the darkness, as your breathing slows, we are going to trace that bloodline backward, through time, through empires, through the ruins of cities whose names we can barely pronounce, because something's happened in our ancient past, something that left a mark, not in stone, not in text, but in blood itself. Here is what makes this so strange. Every primate on Earth carries the rhesus protein. Chimpanzees have it. Gorillas have it. Every monkey species ever tested carries this marker on their red blood cells. It is universal across our entire evolutionary family, except for 15% of humans who simply do not have it. They are Rh negative, and in the ancient world, this rare blood appeared with unusual frequency among people who held power, people who built monuments, people who claimed they were different from everyone else. Were they right? The first mystery appears in Egypt, not the Egypt of the pyramids. Those came later. We need to go back further, to the pre-dynastic period, when the kingdoms of Upper and Lower Egypt were still separate, when the first pharaohs were rising to power. Around 3100 BCE, a ruler named Narmer united Egypt. We know him from a carved palette, a piece of ceremonial stone that shows him wearing the crown of Upper Egypt on one side and the crown of Lower Egypt on the other. He was the first to claim rulership over all of Egypt, the first to establish the dynasty that would last 3,000 years. And here is what researchers noticed when they began studying the royal mummies. The Egyptian royal family, particularly in certain dynasties, showed unusual genetic markers, blood types that did not match the general population. Some of the pharaohs, when their remains could be tested, carried blood types rare in Egypt, blood types more common in Europe. In the Atlantic regions, Rh negative blood. Now, we must be careful here. The evidence is fragmentary. Ancient DNA degrades. Blood type markers can be difficult to detect after thousands of years in a tomb, but the pattern appears often enough to make researchers pause, to make them ask, where did this bloodline come from? Perhaps you have looked at your own family history, traced your ancestry back through generations, and found someone who seemed out of place, someone whose features did not quite match, whose origins could not be fully explained, if so. You understand the feeling that washes over researchers when they find genetic markers that do not belong, that sense of a hidden story waiting beneath the surface. The Egyptian priesthood guarded secrets. This is not speculation. This is documented in their own texts. The priests of Heliopolis, of Memphis, of Thebes, they maintained libraries. They kept knowledge that was forbidden to common people. They taught that the pharaohs were descended from the gods, not symbolically, literally. The pharaoh was the son of Ra, the living embodiment of Horus, a being who stood between heaven and earth, and to maintain this divine bloodline. The royal families married within themselves, brother to sister, uncle to niece, keeping the blood pure, keeping it concentrated. This practice seems bizarre to us now, but they believed they were preserving something in the blood itself. Let that thought settle gently. You do not need to hold it. It will find its own place. Beneath the surface of your attention, the second mystery appears in Sumer, the land between two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, where civilization as we know it began. Around 4500 BCE, cities began to rise in southern Mesopotamia, Uruk, Eridu. These were the first true cities, places where thousands of people lived together, where writing was invented, where the first law codes were carved in stone. The Sumerians called their rulers Lugal, king, but their oldest texts speak of a time before the Lugals, a time when the cities were ruled by beings they called the Anunnaki, the gods who came down. We have their king lists, carved in cuneiform on clay tablets, lists of rulers who supposedly reigned for thousands of years each before the Great Flood. After the flood, the lists say, kingship was lowered again from heaven, and the new kings, the human kings, claimed descent from those earlier divine rulers. They insisted their blood was different, that something of the gods ran through their veins. Modern scholars dismiss these texts as mythology, as exaggerated claims meant to legitimize political power. And perhaps they are right. But when you read the tablets themselves, when you see the care with which the scribes recorded bloodlines, the precision with which they tracked descent, you wonder, what were they actually recording? There is no way to test Sumerian remains for blood type. They cremated their dead. The ash scatters. The evidence turns to dust. But we know they were obsessed with lineage, with maintaining pure bloodlines among the ruling class, with keeping certain families separate from others. Why? What did they believe they were preserving? Perhaps you have felt this yourself, the weight of inheritance, the sense that you carry something forward from ancestors you never knew, a burden or a gift passed through blood and bone. If so, you know the feeling the ancient rulers must have felt, that mixture of pride and responsibility, the knowledge that you are part of something larger than yourself. The third mystery appears in the Americas, long before Columbus. Long before the Spanish conquistadors arrived with their crosses and their diseases, there were civilizations in Central and South America that rivaled anything in Europe or Asia. The Olmec, the Maya, the Toltec, the Aztec. They built pyramids. They charted the stars with precision that still astonishes astronomers. They developed writing systems, created vast trade networks, established empires that lasted centuries, and their ruling classes claimed descent from the gods. The Aztec emperor was not simply a political leader. He was the representative of Quetzalcoatl on earth, the feathered serpent, the god who had come from across the sea, who had taught the people agriculture and astronomy, and who had promised to return, to become emperor. You had to prove your lineage. You had to show that the blood of Quetzalcoatl ran through your veins. When the Spanish arrived, they found something that puzzled them. The Aztec nobility looked different from the common people. Taller, lighter skinned, some with features that seemed almost European. The Spanish wrote about this in their journals. They wondered if perhaps Christians had reached the Americas before them, if some lost tribe, some forgotten expedition had left descendants among the native people. Modern genetic studies have found something interesting. Among certain indigenous populations in Central and South America, there are genetic markers that are extremely rare. Blood types that are almost non-existent in indigenous Asian populations. The ancestors of Native Americans crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Asia, and Asian populations are almost exclusively Rh positive. So, where did the Rh negative blood come from? Some appears to be recent, from European admixture after contact, but there are lineages, particularly in isolated highland communities, where the Rh negative blood seems older, present before the Spanish arrived. How? The academics suggest it was always there, a rare mutation that appeared independently, or perhaps carried by some ancient migration we do not yet fully understand. But the indigenous oral traditions tell a different story. They speak of visitors who came from across the sea, bearded men with pale skin, gods or ancestors, who taught and then departed, leaving behind knowledge and perhaps blood. Let your breath slow now. Let the weight of history settle around you like a blanket. There is no urgency to these mysteries. They have waited thousands of years. They can wait a few more hours while you rest. The fourth mystery appears in the British Isles, on the western edge of Europe, where the Atlantic wind howls across ancient stones, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales. The Celtic peoples have carried Rh negative blood at higher frequencies than almost anywhere else on Earth, 25 to 30% in some regions. These are not recent numbers. Ancient DNA from burial sites shows the pattern has persisted for thousands of years. The Celts kept no written records. Their knowledge was passed orally, through generations of bards and druids. But they had a mythology about blood. about sacred lineages, about the Tuatha De Danann, the tribe of the goddess Danu, beings who were not quite gods and not quite human, who ruled Ireland before the Celts arrived, and who retreated into the mounds, into the hills. When the age of mortals began, the old Irish legends say that some human families carried the blood of the Tuatha De Danann, that this blood gave them second sight, the ability to see what others could not, to know things they should not know. These families became the Druids, the priests, the advisors to kings, and they guarded their lineages carefully, marrying only within certain families, keeping the blood pure. When Christianity came to Ireland, the church found something strange. The old pagan sites, the stone circles, the burial mounds, they were built with astronomical precision, aligned to the solstices, to the movements of stars, knowledge that supposedly primitive people should not have possessed. The Druids, when questioned, said the knowledge came from their ancestors, from the old ones who had taught the first people, and that knowledge was carried in the blood. Modern archaeology has confirmed something remarkable. The megalithic structures in the British Isles, Stonehenge, Newgrange, the Ring of Brodgar, they were built by people who had advanced understanding of astronomy, mathematics, engineering. These were not primitive tribesmen struggling to survive. These were sophisticated cultures, and when researchers managed to extract DNA from burials near these sites, they found elevated frequencies of Rh negative blood. Does this mean anything? Perhaps it means nothing. Perhaps it is simply coincidence. But the pattern repeats again and again. Ancient sites that demonstrate advanced knowledge, built by populations that carried unusual blood, populations that claimed descent from gods or star people, that insisted they were different, that they carried something sacred. Perhaps you have stood at an ancient site, felt the weight of age pressing down, wondered at the skill and knowledge required to build it. If so, you have touched that mystery, that sense of ancestors who knew things we have forgotten. The fifth mystery appears in the Basque Country, nestled in the Pyrenees Mountains, between Spain and France. A small population that has puzzled geneticists for over a century. The Basque people speak Euskara, a language related to nothing else on earth. Not Spanish, not French, not related to any Indo-European language. It stands alone, a linguistic island, surrounded by languages that swept across Europe thousands of years ago, replacing nearly everything in their path, except Euskara. And the Basque people carry Rh negative blood at the highest frequency on Earth, 30 to 35%, 1 in 3. This is not a statistical fluke. This is a defining characteristic of the population. Genetic analysis shows the Basque are among the most ancient populations in Europe. Their DNA suggests they are direct descendants of the first modern humans who arrived in Europe 40 to 50,000 years ago, before the Ice Age, before agriculture, before the great migrations that would reshape the genetic landscape They have been there, in those mountains, for tens of thousands of years, speaking the same language, carrying the same blood. The Basque have legends about their origins. They say they descend from Tubal, the grandson of Noah, who came to Iberia after the Great Flood. They say their ancestors knew things, secret knowledge about the earth, the stars, the cycles of time, and that this knowledge was preserved generation after generation in the blood of certain families. When the Romans arrived, they found the Basque impossible to conquer, not because they were great warriors, but because they simply would not yield. They retreated into their mountains, maintained their language, their customs, their isolation. When Christianity spread across Europe, the Basque converted, but they maintained older practices, older beliefs, hidden beneath the surface of Catholic ritual. And through it all, they preserved their blood, marrying within their communities, maintaining genetic patterns that have barely changed in 20,000 years. What were they protecting? Modern science says nothing. They were simply isolated. Small population, limited gene flow. Genetic drift concentrated certain traits. But the Basque themselves tell a different story. They say they are the last, the final remnant of a people who once covered more of Europe, a people who were here before, who knew things, and whose blood carries memory. Let that settle. Let your body relax deeper into the softness beneath you. You are safe. You are warm. These are old mysteries. They have waited for millennia. They will wait through this night. The sixth mystery appears in the royal mummies. In the 1970s, Egyptian authorities allowed researchers to conduct non-invasive studies of royal mummies using X-rays, CT scans, limited tissue sampling. The goal was to understand health, disease, cause of death. But some researchers noticed something else. Several mummies from the New Kingdom period, the 18th and 19th dynasties, showed unusual features, skull shapes that did not quite match the Egyptian population, bone structure that suggested European ancestry. When tissue samples could be analyzed, when blood markers could be detected, some of the pharaohs showed blood types rare in Egypt. Tutankhamun, the boy king, whose tomb was found nearly intact. Genetic analysis suggests he belonged to haplogroup R1b, a Y chromosome lineage extremely rare in Egypt, but common in Western Europe. Ramesses III, one of the last great pharaohs. Genetic studies indicate his paternal lineage also traces to R1b. This does not prove they were European. Haplogroups are ancient. They trace back tens of thousands of years. They can appear in unexpected places, but it raises questions. The Egyptian royal family practiced incest. Brother married sister, father married daughter, to keep the blood pure, to maintain the divine lineage. But pure from what? What were they trying to preserve? Their own texts say the first pharaohs came from somewhere else, from Ta-Netjer, the land of the gods. They sailed to Egypt. They brought knowledge. They established the first kingdoms and the later pharaohs. Rulers like Tutankhamun and Ramesses insisted they were descended from those first divine kings, that the blood of the gods ran through their veins. We have found depictions of the Neteru, the ancient gods of Egypt, in temple carvings. They are shown with elongated skulls, with unusual physical features, sometimes with pale skin. Some Egyptologists believe these are stylized, symbolic. Others point to the mummies themselves. Several show signs of cranial modification, deliberate shaping of the skull during infancy, a practice found in cultures around the world, always among the elite, always among families claiming special descent. Why would you reshape a child's skull? Some say it was aesthetic, a sign of beauty, of status, but others suggest it was an attempt to recreate something, to make their children look like the ancestors, the ones who came before, the ones who were different. Perhaps you have seen old family photographs, noticed features that seem to skip generations. A grandmother's nose appearing on a great-grandson, eyes that carry forward through time. If so, you understand that blood remembers, that something in our genetics holds patterns, echoes of those who came before. The seventh mystery appears in the priesthoods across ancient civilizations. The priests were separate, not just spiritually, biologically. In Egypt, the priests of Amun maintained strict bloodlines. Only certain families could enter the priesthood, only those who could prove descent, who could show they carried the right blood. In Mesopotamia, the temple complexes had hereditary priesthoods. Knowledge was passed father to son, mother to daughter, for generations. In Central America, the Maya priest caste was closed. You were born into it, or you were not. And these priesthoods, in civilizations separated by thousands of miles, by thousands of years, they all maintained the same practice, careful recording of lineage, restricted marriage, preservation of certain bloodlines. Why? The official explanation is social. Priesthoods wanted to maintain power, to keep knowledge within families, to prevent outsiders from entering. But there may be more. The ancient priesthoods claimed they could see things others could not. They could read the stars, predict eclipses, understand the movements of planets. They said this knowledge came from the ancestors, the old ones, the first teachers, and that the ability to understand this knowledge, to hold it, to use it, required the right blood. We know they possessed remarkable understanding. The Maya calculated the length of the solar year to within seconds of modern measurements. The Egyptians built the Great Pyramid aligned to true north within a fraction of a degree. The Sumerians described planets they should not have been able to see. How? The priests said it was in the blood, that certain families carried knowledge, not as memory, not as teaching, but as something deeper, something genetic. Modern science would say this is impossible. Knowledge is learned, not inherited. But is it? We now know that trauma can be passed genetically, that experiences can alter DNA expression, that what happens to you can affect your children, even your grandchildren. Could knowledge work the same way? Could certain families, through generations of observation, of study, of practice, develop genetic predispositions, neurological patterns that made certain kinds of understanding easier? We do not know. But the priests insisted it was so, and they guarded their bloodlines, as if something precious depended on it. Let your breathing slow. Let the darkness wrap around you gently. There is no hurry. These mysteries have waited for centuries. They will wait through this night. The eighth mystery appears in the Nazca. In the desert of southern Peru, there are lines, enormous lines carved into the ground, geometric shapes, animal figures, patterns that can only be fully seen from the air. The Nazca people created them between 500 BCE and 500 CE, 1,000 years of work, removing the dark surface stones to reveal lighter ground beneath, creating images hundreds of meters across. Why? The Nazca said they were for the gods, for the beings who watched from the sky, the Apus, the sacred ancestors who could fly. When the Spanish arrived, they found Nazca nobility who insisted they were descended from these sky beings, that their blood was different, that they could communicate with the ancestors in ways others could not. Modern analysis of Nazca remains, from the period before Spanish contact, has found something interesting. The ruling class burials, the elaborate tombs. They contain individuals with unusual cranial modifications, with skeletal features suggesting selective breeding, and some genetic markers, though testing is limited, suggest blood types rare in the indigenous population. The Nazca were not alone all along the Pacific coast of South America. Pre-Columbian civilization showed similar patterns. Ruling families claiming sky ancestry, elongated skulls. Selective bloodline maintenance, the Paracas culture just north of Nazca, produced skulls so dramatically elongated that some researchers initially thought they were a different species. Genetic testing proved they were human, but the skulls show intentional modification beginning in infancy, continued for years, creating shapes that matched something. The Paracas legends say they were imitating the ancestors, the first ones who came from the stars, and the families who could prove descent from these ancestors. They became the rulers, the priests, the ones who held power. Their blood was considered sacred. Let that thought drift. You do not need to grasp it. Let it float through your consciousness like a cloud. The ninth mystery appears in the blood itself. What if? What if the ancient rulers were not making it up? Not the gods part, not the literal divine descent. But what if they recognized something real? What if certain bloodlines did carry genetic advantages? We know blood type affects disease resistance, We know it influences immune response. We know that Rh negative blood creates pregnancy complications, but might also provide protection against certain pathogens. In the ancient world, before modern medicine, small genetic advantages could mean the difference between a bloodline surviving or vanishing. Imagine a time of plague. A disease sweeps through a city. 90% die. But certain families survive, not because of luck, because something in their blood resists the disease. They do not understand genetics. They do not know about immune systems, but they recognize the pattern. Certain families survive when others die. Certain bloodlines persist through crisis after crisis. What would you call that? If you were an ancient priest watching this pattern repeat through generations, you would call it divine blood, sacred lineage, the blessing of the gods. And you would guard those bloodlines. You would insist that the rulers, the priests, the leaders come from those families, not because of superstition, but because survival depended on it. This is not mysticism. This is practical genetics, applied without understanding the mechanism, but recognizing the result. The ancient obsession with pure bloodlines, with maintaining certain families, with preventing outsiders from entering city. It might have been crude genetic engineering, attempting to preserve traits that had proven valuable. And if Rh negative blood provided even a small advantage against any disease, any parasite, any environmental stress, then in populations where it became common, where it concentrated in ruling families, it might have looked like magic, like divine intervention, like proof that some people were chosen, when really it was just biology playing out across generations. Perhaps you have family stories of resilience, ancestors who survived when others did not, who lived through famine, plague, war, and passed something forward. If so, you carry their genetics, their survival, whatever advantages they possessed, it flows through you now. The 10th mystery is the silence. Why did this knowledge fade? If ancient civilizations understood something about bloodlines, about genetic advantages, about the importance of certain families, why was it lost? The collapse of civilizations is never simple. Egypt fell to foreign conquest. Mesopotamia was conquered repeatedly. The Maya cities were abandoned. The Inca Empire was destroyed by disease and invasion. When civilizations collapse, knowledge disappears. Libraries burn. Temples are destroyed. Priests are killed. And the knowledge they held, especially knowledge passed orally, especially secrets restricted to certain families, it vanishes. By the time new civilizations rise, by the time people begin to rebuild, the old knowledge is gone, remembered only in legend, in myth, in stories about gods and heroes. The bloodlines remained. The genetics did not disappear. But the understanding of why those bloodlines mattered, that was lost. So when modern researchers find Rh negative blood concentrated in certain populations associated with ancient ruling families, they see an anomaly, a genetic puzzle, but they do not see what the ancients saw. Because the context is gone, the framework is lost. We are looking at fragments, pieces of a picture we can no longer fully see, and perhaps that is how it was meant to be. Perhaps some knowledge was restricted, not out of cruelty, not out of desire for power, but because it was dangerous. Because understanding genetic advantages, understanding bloodline preservation, could lead to terrible things. The Nazis tried to apply genetic selection, create a master race. And the result was genocide. Perhaps the ancient priests, guarding their secrets, restricting knowledge to initiates, were trying to prevent that, trying to protect understanding that in the wrong hands could destroy rather than preserve. So they hid it, buried it in ritual, encoded it in myth, and when their civilizations fell, they let it die with them. Rather than risk it being misused, let your body sink deeper now. Let the weight of these mysteries settle. You do not need to solve them. You do not need to understand. Some questions are meant to remain questions. Some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. And your blood, whatever type it is, whatever lineage it carries, it is doing something more important than holding secrets. It is keeping you alive right now, in this moment. Every beat of your heart, every breath, your blood is carrying oxygen, fighting infection, healing wounds. That is the real miracle. Not ancient bloodlines, not secret knowledge, but the simple fact that you are alive, that your blood flows, that your heart beats. This is the inheritance that matters. Not whether you carry Rh negative, not whether your ancestors were priests or pharaohs, but that you are here. The last link in an unbroken chain, stretching back through time, through all the ancestors who survived, who endured, who passed life forward. That chain includes everyone, every blood type, every lineage. We are all descendants of survivors, all carriers of genetic miracles. And tonight, as you drift toward sleep, your blood remembers, not in words, not in images, but in the quiet way it keeps you alive, the way it has kept humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years, through ice ages and plagues, through famines and floods, through every crisis our species has faced. Blood has been there, flowing, remembering, surviving. So let yourself relax completely now. Let the mystery fade into the background. What matters is not what secrets ancient bloodlines held. What matters is that you are here, that you have survived to this moment, that tomorrow morning Your blood will still be flowing. Your heart will still be beating. And that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. But before you drift completely, one more thought. If you found yourself wondering about ancient mysteries, about hidden knowledge, about secrets buried in time, there is another journey waiting. The mystery of the Emerald Tablets. Ancient texts that claim to hold the secrets of alchemy, of transformation, of wisdom from before the flood. That story connects to this one in ways you might not expect. Both are about knowledge preserved, secrets hidden, and the question of whether our ancestors knew things that we have forgotten. But that is for another night, when you are ready, when the questions call you back. For now, let sleep take you. You are warm, you are safe, you are home. Let the bloodlines of ancient history fade into darkness. Let everything you have heard tonight become a foundation beneath your dreams. Your blood flows, your heart beats. And that is the only mystery that truly matters. Good night.